there was like this film out, so-called documentary called Zeitgeist, which was very popular at the time. It seemed very well researched, so I kind of just accepted that on like face value. I just thought, okay, so that stuff's been, the Jesus stuff's proved wrong, so that's not the way. I started to feel this like guilty feeling in my spirit, which I didn't understand, because I thought to myself, why do I feel guilty for not believing something that I know isn't true? What was really happening was the Spirit of God was already working on me, and He was letting me know that, you know, you think you're moving closer to the truth, but you're actually moving away from it. After this stage in my life, everything got a lot worse. You know, I started taking things like cocaine and, you know, developing an addiction there, and taking pills and doing all sorts of things. All the fornication got a lot worse. Everything got darker. My depression was just overwhelming at this point, you know. From the age of 10 onwards, I'd always pursued music and was releasing music and stuff. Things started to go well in the sense of I was releasing a lot of music, I was doing a lot of shows. My wife, she was saying to me that she wanted to, you know, possibly go to a church and study the Bible. So I've still got all these zeitgeist like views in my head. So I'm saying like, no, you don't want to do that. It's not true. Jesus never lived. I said, I'll prove it to you. So this was the first time that I ever actually did any kind of research into that stuff myself, instead of just believing what someone else said.
Hi, welcome to Touching the Afterlife. Our guest today is Stephen. Stephen was an atheist who was set out to prove that Jesus was just a myth. And then God took him by the hand and took him down a path of evidence for Jesus and the Bible. Wait till you find out what this physical evidence was. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being with us. And I would love for you to start and share your journey with us.
The way it started for me, I actually have to go right back to the beginning of my life, really, to say how it kind of set up. But I was born into a household that was not like a particularly religious family or anything like that. We didn't go to church. We didn't like read the Bible or things like that. But there was a foundation of faith laid. I wasn't exactly an atheist. I would say I was a theist, but I definitely didn't follow any set religion. But my dad, for example, he did teach me to pray when I was very young, and he would talk to me about the Bible and things. But that's really as far as that went. We didn't study the Bible. I didn't. I was aware that, you know, there was a God, but I didn't know who God was. I didn't know what His character was. And I think as I grew up, what I started to do was, instead of realizing that I'm actually made in God's image, I would kind of try and project my image onto God. So if I agreed with something, then I would assume that God would agree with it, and if I didn't, then I would assume that God doesn't. So really, I was trying to shape God into my own image. At the age of about 10 years old, I got like really into hip hop music, and that kind of just took over my life with like a big passion. I was really influenced by that. I grew up in an area where there was a lot of drug abuse, a lot of alcoholism. Yeah, it was quite a poor area. So by the age of like 13, influenced by both of those things, like the culture around me, and also, you know, the rappers that I was listening to and stuff, I started to like smoke weed with my friends and get drunk, and I was like really into like graffiti, so I'd be out doing that. And like, you know, as I got older, I was like chasing girls and, you know, getting into like fornication and these kind of things, which I didn't see anything wrong with those things, like I said before, because I didn't know God's character. I didn't actually see any of this stuff as sinful. I just thought it was just part of growing up. Um, and then really, you know, that lifestyle progressed, and throughout my teenage years, you know, it really got worse and worse. Um, but at the age of about 14, something significant happened with my prayer life. So my aunt was told that she had these aneurysms on her brain, and the doctor told her that basically they were inoperable. They couldn't operate. If they did, then she was basically sure to die. They told her that she either had 6 weeks or 6 months to live. I can't remember which it was, but they basically told her to go home and tell your family that you don't have much time left. So she did that, and again, with us not being like a religious family, we didn't all sit together and pray, but I think individually we all did pray for her. And I know my aunt started to attend the church at that point because, you know, faced with her mortality, I think, you know, she was sort of turning to God in that stage. What happened was very next time she went to the hospital, They did another scan, and they said, we've got no medical explanation for this, but you're absolutely fine. Like, there's no problem. So for me, as a young, like, 14-year-old, that was something that, was very key. The doctor said that it's a miracle. He actually used that word, miracle. So that really instilled something in me, like, wow, God really does listen to our prayers, kind of thing. So that was like a key moment. But with me not knowing God's character and not really seeing a problem with the way that I lived, I did just continue in the lifestyle that I was in. Um, but at some points, I did feel that I was being protected. I was in a very negative environment, but I did have these little glimpses that, like, God was protecting me. So, for an example of that, something that happened was, I was at a house party one day, and I received a phone call from someone that I didn't even really know. Like, I was actually really unsure how this guy got my number, but this guy called me and he said, "I'm in your area, and I have to be somewhere, but I don't know how to get there. So could you come and meet me at the train station so you can direct me?" So I was like, "Okay, cool." So, I left the party and I went to the train station, which was like 10 minutes away. And when I got there, the guy's nowhere to be seen. So I tried to give him a call on the number that he called me on, and the number wouldn't even connect. So I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on here, but I waited probably another 5-10 minutes. He didn't show, so then I just carried on. I went back to the party, and then when I got back to where that was, there was like police tape all around the road. Everybody was out on the street. There was loads of police cars. An ambulance had just left, and I found out what had happened in the half an hour that I had been away was a bunch of other teenagers had crashed the party, and that led to a fight which spilled out onto the street, and somebody got stabbed in that party. So, um, you know, and I never, the guy that called me, I never heard from him again. So it was such a really strange way for me to be taken out of that situation. And things like that would happen, like, quite a lot. Like, a lot of dangerous things would occur, but I would always, have just missed it somehow. So I kind of did take notice of these things, and I did really feel like God was looking out for me. But again, like I say, without really knowing God's character, I just continued in that sort of negative lifestyle. Um, and then as I got to the age of about 16, having spiritual beliefs but not really being grounded anywhere, I started to get into the new age kind of thing. So I would start to see, like, clairvoyance and have tarot cards read to me and things like that, which, definitely opened some demonic doors, which I didn't realize at the time. When people do like a fake whisper noise, like that kind of noise, it's like I could hear that on, like, the outside of my ear. And as that happened, I heard, like, this real soft voice in my head say, "Stephen," say my name. So, these things hadn't happened before, but I was still not too alarmed at this point, and I was still busy, so I just carried on. Um, and I remember I became thirsty, right? So I took a clean glass that I had just washed in the dishwasher, and I went and got some apple juice from the fridge, which had no problem with it. It was like, fresh apple juice. So I've poured it into the glass, and I've went to drink it. Like, so I've come up like this. It's fine. I drank half of the glass, no problem. And as I've come down and looked in the glass, I seen that it was, like, covered with mold. So, I was like, splash that away. And, I was quite alarmed by that. But again, I didn't feel the need to try to acknowledge the spirits or whatever. So I've just carried on doing what I'm doing. And then there was, like, this dinner plate that had been on this counter with, like, a cover on it, in the middle of this, like, tabletop, and it'd been there for hours. And all of a sudden, that come flying off. So I've cleaned that up, and I really feel like they was angered in that day because I wasn't acknowledging them. And I prayed that, whatever spirit was there, would move on, and it's that kind of, those occurrences stopped for a while, but then they did start to continue again after that. But I know now, looking back, those things was happening to me because I had opened doors with the tarot cards and the clairvoyance and things like that. At this point, my beliefs was all over the place. I hadn't actually rejected Christ. I just didn't really know who he was. So, but then at a later stage, maybe like a year or two later, I don't know if you remember, I think this is probably going back to about 2007. There was like this film out, so-called documentary called Zeitgeist, which was very popular at the time. And that spoke about certain things. It spoke about 9/11. It spoke about the Federal Reserve. And then it spoke about Jesus. So it was saying that the Jesus story, it was saying Jesus never existed, never walked the earth. And the stories that we read about Jesus in the Bible, they're all plagiarized. They've all been copied from older religions and mythologies. And it named all of these mythological characters that were supposed to have the same story as Jesus, right? So it seemed very well researched. So I kind of just accepted that on like face value. I just thought, okay, so that stuff's been, the Jesus stuff's proved wrong, so that's not the way. And that was the first time, or the only time, but that was the first point in my life that I ever like fully rejected Christ. And what happened at that point was I started to feel this like guilty feeling in my spirit, um, which I didn't understand, because I thought to myself, why do I feel guilty for not believing something that I know isn't true? So I started to kind of reason with myself that it was probably because I was born in a Christian country, and from being in primary school, we've done the nativity play and celebrated Christmas and Easter, and I kind of felt like I'd been brainwashed with this like Christian worldview, and because I was rejecting that I was feeling guilty because of that. But now looking back, I know what was really happening was the Spirit of God was already working on me, and He was letting me know that you think you're moving closer to the truth, but you're actually moving away from it. So what followed that was everything got really dark after that point. At this point, all I was really doing was smoking weed and drinking and stuff. After this stage in my life, everything got a lot worse. I started taking things like cocaine and developing an addiction there, and taking pills and doing all sorts of things. All the fornication got a lot worse. Everything got darker. My depression, um, you know, was just overwhelming at this point. Um, I'd always sort of carried that around, but I was kind of masking it with like, drinking drugs and stuff. But it was getting really dark at this point. Um, and then what happened after that was I met the woman that became my wife. So my lifestyle started to become more positive when I met her, because I started to spend more time with her than I was with this peer group that I was with. And as I said earlier, I was really into hip hop music from the age of 10. I was writing my own lyrics and stuff like that. So I had always pursued that, throughout from the age of 10 onwards. I had always pursued music and was releasing music and stuff. So things started to go well in the sense of I was releasing a lot of music, I was doing a lot of shows. I'd met this woman that I was happy with. We started a family, and so I was happy with all these elements of my life, but deep down there was still something missing. There was still that depression that was kind of hanging over me, and I started to clean up my lifestyle. Not completely at this point, but it was getting better. And then I ended up having, with my wife, we ended up having two children. We've got three now, but at this point, we had two sons. And and at some stage, this is now, we're fast forwarding to like 2015, and my wife, she was saying to me that she wanted to, possibly go to a church and study the Bible. So I've still got all these zeitgeist like views in my head. So I'm saying like, no, you don't want to do that. So I shut that down real fast, and I was saying, you really don't want to do that. It's not true. Jesus never lived. I said, I'll prove it to you. So this was the first time that I ever actually did any kind of research into that stuff myself, instead of just believing what someone else said. And what I did was, all of these mythological characters that were said to have the same story as Jesus, I read all of their stories, and I found out that none of them was the same. Like, none of them had the Jesus story. So that was like a big eye opener for me, to not just take things on face value. So I was really shocked. Like, that's not what I expected to find. So I thought to myself, well, is there any evidence that Jesus really lived? So I started looking into like the historical um, evidence for Jesus, and I saw that there's actually more historical records for Jesus than there is for most people of ancient times. So, Julius Caesar, for example, there's more records for Jesus than there are for Julius Caesar. So I saw that his name was Yeshua, and what we have is the English translation of that. I saw that one of these first century historians that didn't follow him, wasn't a Christian. This really piqued my interest. He said that Jesus was performing miracles through like witchcraft. So I was really shocked to read that, because I'm thinking, here's a guy from the time of Jesus, and he's not even denying that he did miracles, but he's trying to attribute the power to something else, like anything other than God. So that really, that piqued my interest. But the more I looked into this stuff, the more I realized that it really hung on the resurrection. So at this point, I prayed and I asked God, um, if this Jesus is someone to you that I need to know about, then I need you to show me if he rose from the dead. And when I prayed that prayer, I don't even know how I was expecting God to show me that. Like, how was I expecting him to show me something that possibly happened 2,000 years ago? But the very same day, I ended up seeing a documentary just randomly on my TV about the burial cloth of Jesus that's got this very mysterious image on it of a crucified man, caused by the resurrection. So when I saw that in my spirit, it was like being punched in the face. It was like such a shock. Like, I instantly knew in my spirit that God was answering my prayer. Um, and there's lots of theories, for and against the shroud, but it would probably take too long to get into that. But that was the moment that I accepted. Okay, like, Jesus is real. Like, he really rose from the dead. And then because I still didn't really know, you know, what to do with that, I ended up speaking to this guy that I met called Tony, and I told him about all this evidence stuff, and he said, you've done all this research, you've accepted, I mean, you know all this stuff now, but you haven't accepted him, you haven't asked him into your heart. So I didn't even know that I had to do that. So probably like the following day I did that, and I ended up just weeping, because for the first time in my life, like, I could feel the weight of all of my sin, the things that I didn't even think were sinful in the past. I could feel the weight of them, and I knew that God had, like, pardoned me from that because of what Jesus did. And then the real evidence came, because that's when I started to see lots of spiritual things and hear spiritual things. Especially as a new Christian, it was just like one thing after another. I just kept having so many like spiritual experiences. So every day for like a week, I would wake up and I would hear the voice of an angel speak to me as I woke up. And like one morning, it said, "The King has risen," talking about the resurrection of Christ, and things like that. And I started to see spiritual things, like I started to see like these like drips of water. Like, I'd be in my living room and I'd see like a drip of water fall, and I would like look up to see if there's a leak, and there's no leak, and nothing's wet on the ceiling and nothing's wet on the floor. But this stuff would always happen at very key moments, like it was a confirmation. Like, if I was praying about something, you know, God would just like show me like a drip of water. And since then, like, my sons have said to me, "There's a leak there," and I'm looking and I can't see anything, and then I realize, oh, they can see it too. So yeah, and all these different types of like visions and stuff. So one day I was in my living room, and like all of my family was asleep upstairs, and I'm sat in my living room. I don't think I've ever told anyone this one, but that kind of TV show where it's like a portal opens up. It was sort of like that, but there was like this small like patch of this reality. It was like it was removed, and I could see through it, and I could see like this color that it doesn't exist here. So because it's not in front of me now, I can't even picture it anymore. So it's very difficult to explain it. But what I could see was it was like a little bit like blue, but it wasn't blue. It was a little bit like silver, but it wasn't silver. And it was like sparkling, like how the light catches the edge of a diamond and it sparkles. It was like sparkling, but there was no edges on it. And yeah, I just didn't know, what that was. And then this is when I was like a new Christian, so I hadn't read all of the Bible at this point. And then one day when I was reading the book of Revelation, and you know, John has this vision, and I think he sees, the like a lake in heaven, and he can't remember how it describes it, like sapphire, I think it says. When I read that, God confirmed to me like that's what I saw, like in this patch of, this realm that was like removed. So all this stuff started happening. So it was a really amazing time. There was also demonic things. I started to see demonic things happen as well. Me and my wife, we got baptized on the same day, and on the run up to our baptism, there was like a really bad like spiritual attack on us. So one thing that happened was we both had the exact same dream on the same night, and the dream was we was getting our kids together, and these like demonic beings was chasing us. So we didn't even know that we had the same dream, but it wasn't until a few days later that one of us would have mentioned it, and the other one was like, "Hang on, like what day did that happen?" And we realized it was the same dream on the same night. So things like that. I actually heard the voice of God speak to me. So I mentioned earlier about like having this depression. So since I accepted Christ, the depression was gone, my addictions were gone, everything was gone. And what happened was I basically, in my spirit, I felt like I was just celebrating like the whole time. And then one day I started to doubt and started to worry and started to think, well, what if that depression comes back? And then I heard the voice of God speak to me and say, "Have I not set you free?" And I said, I was confused because I'd never heard anything like this. And I said, "Yes, you have." Like, assuming it's got to be God. And then he said, "So be set free." And then I immediately started to doubt again, because it's not like anything I'd ever heard before. It was like telepathic words in my mind, and I knew it wasn't my own thought. And it was like, it's like there wasn't a specific voice, but I've explained it to someone like this before. If I was in a heavy metal concert and I'm stood next to the loudest speaker, like this voice would still be louder than that, even though there wasn't an actual voice. It was just like the words being just like communicated to me. So yeah, he said, "Have I not set you free?" I said, "Yes, you have." He said, "So be set free." And then as soon as I doubted, my attention was drawn to my fridge, because on my fridge there was loads of these fridge magnets, and each of them had a different word on it, but there was like scattered, all across. And my attention has gone from like here to here to here, and it said, "He said this," and it's like I read it like it was words in a book, even though it was like scattered across the whole of the fridge. Um, so yeah, just like so many different experiences like that. Um, but again, like back to like the more kind of demonic stuff that I started to experience. This was just a few years ago. I was just scrolling on YouTube, and this music video popped up. It was like a rock song from like 20 years ago. So I wasn't really into like rock music, but my brother was into it, and some of my friends was into it. So I recognized it, even though it wasn't something that I would have ever really listened to, right? So I've um, I've clicked on it. The song played for like 10 seconds. It's like really heavy, and I was thinking like, this is not my cup of tea. So I turned it over to a different one, another song from that era, like another like new metal song. And when you feel somebody's watching you, so I feel like someone's staring at me from the side of me. So as the song's playing, I turn to the side of me, and in my hallway, I can see this like dark silhouette. It was like a figure standing in my hallway. It was just a dark shadow. And I'm looking right at it, but it's got no features. It's just black. Um, it was about my height. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm 5'7". It was about my height, but it was like really like like it was a bodybuilder, like really wide, and it was like emitting this feeling of like pure hatred. Like this thing was staring at me, and it was pure hatred that was coming from it. And I said, "Leave in Jesus' name," and it disappeared. But that showed me from that moment that how music, um the devil uses music. Like he can, spirits can travel with it. You know what I mean? And I googled the band as soon as this happened. I googled the band, and the first image that came up on Google was the whole band around a Ouija board. So I know that they was into the occult, you know. Um, and then that night when I slept, the first song that played, the one that I skipped, um, I hadn't heard that song in about 20 years. And I probably, even back in the day, probably never actually really listened to it. Like, it would have been on in the background, so I didn't know the song. But in my dream, it's like someone had a speaker to my ear and was playing the whole song. Like, I could hear, like, from start to finish, the whole song, like every lyric in it, even though I don't think I've ever even heard the song from start to finish. And then I woke up and I could still hear it playing, and it kind of made me want to go play it, even though I didn't like it. It was like kind of trying to draw me to it. So again, this was letting me know, like, like the enemy, like, he uses music, he uses Hollywood and things like this. But that's why I'm so thankful of the musical gift that I have, because I stopped rapping for myself, for my own glory. I started rapping for God, for His glory. And one of the things that I did was the video that I sent to you, which was I compiled all of that evidence that I saw and put it all into a song, and I used all these documentary clips and put it all together to make this music video. Um, because you know what I found at that time was, if I was to try to speak to people about this stuff, as soon as people hear Jesus or whatever, they just turn off. They don't want to hear it. But I knew that I could. I knew I had a gift with music. I knew I could get people to listen to that. So I thought, if I could compile it into like a song, then I'll do that. So
When I first
yeah.
heard it, when you
So
sent it to me, I was just moved. It really hit. There's anointing, there's the spirit of truth is all over it, and, like you were saying, it's really spoke to people, atheists, right? Different atheists and different other faiths have heard this and were ministered to through this
yeah,
song, and so I recommend that people check this song out because it's very powerful. So were you
yeah. Thank
yes,
you.
were you and I just love that you had this gift, this talent, and you've had this since you were a child, and you were drawn towards it in the secular realm, but the Lord changed that desire for you with your talent, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. So I loved gangster rap. I loved horror movies. Like, I was so much into that stuff. Um, and something that the Lord revealed to me after I was born again was how many of the people that I used to idolize, how many of those people have actually sold their soul to get where they are. And um and like with the movies, for example, like, my favorite genre before I was born again, my favorite genre to watch was horror movies. I used to love to watch the really demonic ones, like, The Exorcist and The Omen and these kind of things, that was like really, centered on the devil. Like, I wasn't into that stuff spiritually, but I found it entertaining to watch it. And but God revealed something to me in a dream about the movies. So what happened was, I had a dream where in my house I have a porch that has like a second door. So I was laying down in my porch, and because I had prayed, I asked God, like, are these movies, like, are they just entertainment, or are they really like bad in a spiritual way? And He gave me this dream where I was laying down in my porch, and the porch door was open, and my house door was open, and I could feel like probably like 10 pairs of hands was like grabbing at me. And as I woke up for a couple of seconds, I could still physically feel these hands on me. And again, it was another moment where I had to say, "Leave in Jesus' name." There was a real spiritual thing that was happening. Um, but God allowed that to happen to show me something. So over the course of the next day, He revealed to me the meaning of the dream, and the meaning was, when you watch this stuff, when you allow this stuff into your home, you're opening a doorway to the enemy, and you're laying down. You're not guarding it. You're not guarding your family. You're not guarding your household. You're laying down, and you've opened the doors, and you're letting them in.
Mm.
So that's how I realized that this stuff is, it's like a lot more serious.
Stephen, I love how, you kept asking the Lord for answers to confirm, and he was faithful to give you signs, dreams through the word, and that's what he does. And so your faith is growing, and then you get this song you put out.
Time, God had basically just given me the word. So I just put the pen to paper, and the whole thing just comes out, and it's like, there's no chorus or anything like that. It's just one long verse that's talking about this burial cloth of Jesus. But since putting that song out, you know, there's been atheists that, when atheists, they give this this kind of straw man argument where they say, oh, you pray to your sky daddy, and it's a man with a beard in the sky, and they compare him to Santa Claus and all this kind of stuff. These atheists, right? They've seen this music video that's full of like scientific evidence that backs up the Bible, and they're really taken back by that because they're seeing a side of the story that they've never even considered could be the truth. That they never knew this stuff existed. I never knew this stuff existed beforehand. Um, so yeah, it's really opened their eyes. And like people from Islam, like obviously they believe they call Jesus Isa, and they believe that he wasn't crucified, and God made someone look like him to fool the people and basically lie to the people and say like he was crucified. That's their belief. So when they see it, they're taken back that there's actual scientific evidence that the resurrection really occurred, because history states that the crucifixion happened, but not many people really know that science has actually given evidence for the resurrection. But that's what I've experienced a lot with this song, the fact that, and it's great for believers because most believers know somebody who doesn't believe or wants to see some evidence or thinks that it's a fairy tale and it has no kind of like, there's nothing to it kind of thing. So it's been good for the atheists that have seen it, the people of other faiths, and it's also been great for Christians because I feel like it kind of arms people with that, something in that kind of debate that they can go with. Now, obviously, there's people that say that it's fake. So the theory was that it was a medieval forgery, this burial cloth, but that's been scientifically thrown out because what they found was there was a repair job in the medieval period. So there was a dating test that said it was medieval. There's many more that said it was first century. Lots of forensic evidence that says it's first century and Jerusalem, based, and all this kind of stuff from all the forensic stuff. But the media really had a field day with this one dating test in 1988, which was actually the year I was born, coincidentally. But what they found was, when they re-examined it, they found that it was first century linen mixed with a medieval cotton. So in the medieval time, there was this repair job that skewed the date. So that theory was thrown out. But, we don't actually have any technology available to us today that can make the image, because it's like, it's a flat, a flat cloth. It's a two-dimensional image. But what these scientists have found is that it's got like a three-dimensional holographic like makeup to it, so you can actually project a complete hologram from it. So how did someone in the first century make the world's first hologram and the world's first like X-ray and photograph all in one image? Like, we can't make that image. People have made things that look like it, but no one can replicate those qualities that it has. So as it stands, there's no evidence against it because the only theory anyone had has been disproved. And actually, when I was a new Christian and I said I had like an angel like speak to me every day for like a week, one of the things that the angel said was the shroud is real. I just wanted more people to look at it. That's why I made that song, because you know I can preach to people. I can tell them my experiences, all these spiritual experiences that I've had. I can tell people that, but they could just say I'm insane, or they could say I was hallucinating or whatever. Like, if their heart's not in it, then they're not going to believe it. But I feel like to give someone a set of evidence that they can weigh up for themselves, um, I just felt that was a good thing to do. A lot of people are becoming more aware these days that that there's a lot of satanic imagery and occult imagery in the music. And as I said before, it's not just like rock music. Like, everybody knew back in the day rock had this kind of like image to it, but it's in the pop music, it's in Taylor Swift's videos and hip hop and everything. It's everywhere, and it's in Hollywood too. I think some of these artists like sold their soul for fame, and they know exactly what they was doing. I think some of them are being used by the enemy because they don't know the truth. So it, the devil doesn't care what you believe as long as you don't believe in Christ. So if someone rises to fame and they have new age beliefs, the devil doesn't mind those beliefs being pushed because he's at the center of them too. So but then there's the ones that do know exactly what they're doing, and there's people that have spoke out that are from the music industry, that have said that, in these high up board meetings at record labels, they actually pray over their releases and pray that, certain demonic spirits will travel with it. And that's what I experienced that day when I played that song, and I saw, I thank God that He's given me a gift where I'm able to see like spiritual things. It doesn't happen all the time, but I'm thankful that I have that gift, because it shows me that it's actually it's a lot more severe than people realize. Another thing, um, now I know people don't usually like name and shame these artists, but somebody was listening to that song by Lizzo. I don't know if you know it, but it says the one that says "Got my hair done, check my nails," like that one. Someone was playing that song near me, and I heard something completely different in the lyrics. I heard like a very demonic voice say, "Jump into the pit." And I asked the person, said, "What did that song say?" And they just told me like the normal lyrics. So they didn't hear it, but I heard it, and I was like, "Wow!" Like, this, even in the pop music, it's well, you can see it. You can see the symbolism in the videos and stuff as well, and on their stage performances. And some, you have the songs where if you play them backwards, there's like a message in
Mm.
it. um, there's like this one songwriter who's been around for like 30 years, and all of the pop bands from like the 90s, like up until today, like he wrote for all of those, and he would always tell them to sing things in a certain way and even mispronounce words a certain way. Um, and the band themselves, they probably wouldn't know why he's told them to do it that way, but when you play it backwards, it actually gives a message. So he said that he would get the lyrics in dreams and things like that. So
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, so I'm sure if people was to search for that, they would find it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like it's the enemy definitely has his hand on it.
Yeah.
And it's we know that in heaven, like before he was cast out, like he had something to do with music even then, so it would make sense that he would use that,
Right. And again, how powerful music is for heaven and worship, and so now that brings us
Yeah,
to the presence of God, and Satan's music brings
yeah.
us into the presence of darkness. So I wanna know, do you have a vision now? Like, what's your vision? What are you getting? What is your heart for this gift and where God's taking you in the future?
So I mentioned earlier that I heard God speak to me like in that one moment where He said, "Have I not set you free?" There was also another time that I've actually heard the audible voice of God, and it's when I was trying to figure out how can I preach in music to people that don't want to hear it, like they don't want to hear about Jesus and stuff like that. And I was trying to figure out all these clever ways of how I can kind of Trojan horse the gospel in there, and I was trying to figure it out, and I was praying about it for weeks, and I was racking my brain trying to figure it out, and I came to the conclusion that I just can't do it. So I had a book, like a book of handwritten lyrics, and I was just about to just like throw it away. It was just about to leave my hand, and God spoke to me, and He said, "Tell your story." Just 3 words, and it was from that point it was just clear. Like, I don't have to think of clever ways to do it. I don't have to worry about how people are going to respond. All I have to do is tell my story, and then God will
Yeah.
take care of the rest. So that's what I plan to do with the music, to just continue to do that. That's why I did the song about the evidence. But as I've shared with you in this testimony, there was also
Mm.
depression, drug abuse, all sorts of things going on. I got songs about that stuff. I'm very open in my music about where I was at, and opportunities like this today. I don't think I've ever had the
Mm.
opportunity to be on a platform like this and tell my whole story like this. So I know that this is in line with what God wants. So I appreciate opportunities like this, and God also has revealed to me in the past that the plan is not for me to be like on the biggest stages. Like I asked God before, like what is the plan for the music? You give me a gift. What's the plan for it? And He said to me, He
Yeah.
gave me a phrase. A phrase just appeared in my mind, which I didn't even understand. Like I had to kind of Google it at the time to really understand the definition. But He just said to me, grassroots. So from Googling what that was and understanding what that was, I realized that God's plan for me is to just be in and around the community and use my gift in more of a local sense. So, I'm not aiming to be on the biggest stages. You have Christian rappers like The Cray, for example, who's been at the Grammys and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. And I'm sure God appoints people to be in those spaces, because that's a dark world. So, He's going to send people into those places. But I know that His plan for me is to be the grassroots version, really, to just be in and around the local communities and help where I can.
I think that's great. What I think is the most important, the Lord's heart, is that first and foremost is seeking his kingdom and having a relationship with him. And then it all is going to be added to you. So you don't have to try to figure it out or worry and it doesn't matter. We just have to die to self and know that it's all for him and he's going to use you how he wants to use you and when and what that looks like. So just keep trusting in the Lord with all your heart. So I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And I would love for you to, is there any final words, Stephen, as before we close? And then if you could pray for us.
So, just for some final words, I would just really urge everybody to check out that music video, not for any kind of self promotion, but just for the fact that if you know someone that would be interested in that tangible evidence side of things, or maybe you've tried everything you can think of to reach someone and nothing's breaking through, just like maybe try sending them that, or even just show them a documentary. It doesn't have to be my song. I only did it to create awareness of what's already there. So um, yeah, as I said earlier, it's not the real evidence like that comes when you accept Jesus, like I experienced. But yeah, just check it out, and if you feel led to send it to someone, then do so. In the description box, there is some documentaries as well that you can check
Yeah.
out. So that's what I'd like to say.
Mm.
But yeah, I'll just pray to close.
Yes.
Okay. Father God, I thank you so much for this opportunity to share what you've done in my life. I just
Mm.
pray for everybody that views this, and if everyone that's viewing this, it has someone on their heart that they want to draw to the Lord, just lift up their name now and pray together, Lord. Every name that's on everybody's
Yes.
heart right now, I pray that you just draw them in, show them who you are. Don't let anybody be confused about your character like I was.
Mm.
They try to paint you as all sorts, all sorts
Mm.
these days, Lord. That's not of your nature. I just pray that you just show people that you desire to be their Father and that you just want them in your kingdom. I just pray that you move anybody watching this to share it with someone that would benefit from it. And I just pray that you have your will with this, Lord. It's your will, it's not ours, Lord. And I just pray that you just use us vessels to forward your kingdom. And I thank you for this
Yes.
opportunity. In Jesus' name, I pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
In Jesus' name.
I said
Amen.
religion was a tool of the system, and anyone can see through it with a bit of wisdom. So now what's different? Wise capes are Christian.